Welcome back, everyone, to week 7. So, we are almost at the end of this thing, and you guys should be pretty excited because you've all put in a lot of freaking hard work. Now, this week is a little bit different, and instead of reading a full email, you guys get to listen to me this whole time. So, be sure to pay attention because this one's a little bit more of a learning curve, but I want to teach you what macros are and how to use them to your advantage. Now, this is going to be basically macros 101. So, what the hell is a macro? So, it's short for macronutrients. There are three macronutrients, which are protein, fat, and carbs. Some people say there's a fourth macronutrient, which is alcohol, but we don't really need to know that for right now. Just let's focus on the three. Now, to better understand what macros are, we're going to dive into each one separately and kind of figure out what they do in our body, why they're important, and where we should pay attention to. Now, easy one we're going to start with is protein. We all know that protein helps us build muscle and it prevents muscle loss. So, this is why in the past of this challenge, I always said to almost every single one of you is to, increase your protein intake. A lot of people undereat protein without even knowing it, and they always have trouble, burning off that last bit of fat. And protein's usually what you need to focus on. Now, just like I think I mentioned before, protein requires more energy to break down in our bodies, which is perfect for fat loss. This is why I always tell people to increase their protein intake because you're going to be burning more calories just by eating rather than focusing your, calories on carbs and fat that don't really burn as much energy. So, where do I, you know, break down protein in a percentage of your diet? It's going to be around 30 to 35% of your calories, right? So the question is that a lot of people ask is like, well, how much protein do I need? And really, there's no blanketed statement. It's it's so individualized, and this is where that fine tuning kind of goes in. So we're gonna look at how an example would look like. So an individual can eat, zero point 0.5 grams of protein to 1.5 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. So what the hell does that mean? An example would be that I have on our little slideshow here is, say there's a 200-pound man with 20% body fat. His lean body mass would be 160 pounds. All I did there was take 200 and multiply it by 20. You get a 160. Yes, there's room for error because of, you know, organ mass and bone mass, but for entry level macros, you do not need to know that. All of this is just, an estimation, but it's a pretty accurate estimation when it comes to eating. Now, if I recommended this man, based on his goals, to eat, zero point 0.5 grams of protein per lean body mass, all you would do is take his lean body mass, that's of 160 pounds, multiply that by zero point 0.5, and he would be eating 80 grams of protein per day. That's his number. Now, what should you be aiming for? Kind of like a blanketed statement. Women should basically aim for zero point 0.8 grams of protein per lean body mass, and men should basically grab around 1 gram of lean body mass. So, again, it's a rough estimation, but it's good to know in the back of your head. Now, we're going to move on to fat. So, what the hell does fat do for our bodies? Well, it absorbs vitamins, which is important. It regulates our hormones, which is a huge one when it comes to fat loss. A lot of people can fall into categories of, hormonal dysfunction, and fat is the one that can help us regulate. There's things where, your, like say your hunger hormones are not working properly. By adjusting your fat intake and fine tuning it will actually help those hormones to work. Um, that's just a small example, but that's where the diet comes into play a lot. And also, what's another important one is fat allows our brain to function optimally. Now, where do you get healthy fats? You can get it from meat. You can get it from fatty fish, nuts, healthy oils, peanut butters, all those kind of different nut butters, and more. And you're probably asking, well, how much fat should I be eating per day? And again, it really depends on the individual and what they're training for and what they're trying to achieve. So, as a blanketed statement, an individual can be eating for total calories anywhere from 15 to 45% of their daily macro breakdown. Now, if we had to do a estimation of how much, it could be anywhere from 0.35 grams to 7 grams per lean body weight. And again, this is just an example of a range, and it depends on a person's goals and everything like that. If you still don't know what the hell I'm talking about, just like I said before, those portion sizes, aim for a thumbful of fat, which is about 15 grams of fat. Just like, can't remember what week it was, but the week that we had all the info on your fat. So, let's go move on to carbs. So, carbs are stored in our liver, brain, blood, and muscles in a form of glycogen. You just want to think of carbs as energy. Our body uses them for energy. And where do you get carbs from? Well, you can get them from fruit, vegetables, grains, potatoes, processed foods, or anything you crave that's considered junk. It's all carbs. And again, you're probably asking, well, how many carbs am I allowed to have, or how much am I supposed to have? And it depends, again, on the individual. Technically, you could live without carbs. There's so many low carb diets out there and ketogenic diets where you're just eating protein and nothing else. But there's the flip side where there's so many athletes out there and bodybuilders, for example, that can eat up towards 700 grams per day. So it really depends on the individual. Like, say someone who's really, really active, I always give this example to everyone. Like Michael Phelps, when he was competing at the Beijing Olympics in 2008, I believe, he was ingesting 10,000 calories per day just to keep up with his activity level, because he was burning so many calories, he had to replenish all that. And the things that he was eating for carbs to replenish what he lost, I vividly remember reading the article and watching the little video that it clipped onto it. He was eating a full pizza to himself and slathering mayonnaise on it just to keep up with his demand on his body. So that's an extreme example, but that's where macros fall into play if you wanted to be that specific. So, blanketed statement, per lean pound of body mass, you want to aim for anywhere from 0.5 grams to 2 grams of carbs. Now, most of you, well, majority of you, your goal is fat loss. So what you want to do is stick to vegetables as your main source of carbs. You can have those starchy carbs, post-workout, because that's where you've burned so much energy and you need to replenish to be able to go back to your next workout recovered and ready to produce the same amount of energy. If your goal was, strength and muscle mass and endurance, that's where all those starchy carbs come into play more often. Because if you're only eating, one starchy carb meal per day post workout, and you're trying to cycle 100 kilometers on the weekend, you're going to bonk out at probably 20 kilometers and feel like shit for the rest of the day because you just don't have that stored energy. Now, what should your macros be? Well, in order to figure that out, we need to figure out how many calories you should be eating. Now, this is a formula I got from Precision Nutrition that kind of gives you a rough estimate of what you kind of fall under, which category, and what you should kind of aim for. So let's look at your activity level. So I call this level 1, where it's kind of like minimal activity per week, where you're either doing nothing or you're training like 1 day a week. Now, to lose weight, you want to multiply your body weight by 10 to 12. If you wanted to maintain your weight, you want to multiply your body weight by 12 to 14. And if you wanted to gain weight, like muscle gain, then you want to multiply your body weight by 16 to 18. And those are rough estimate of calories of what you should be ingesting. Now, let's look at an example because I just threw out a bunch of numbers. So say we have a 140-pound woman that is interested in some weight loss, and she's moderately active, so we multiply her weight of 140 by 12, and she gets about 1,680 calories per day. Now, if we multiplied that by 16 to get the other end of the spectrum, it's 1,960 calories. That's the range, 1,600 to 1,900. And the number can always adjust. If you were to feel, at 1,600 calories that you're really run down, tired all the time, you're not recovering from workouts, then let's increase your calories by 200. See if that helps. If you still feel run down, that's where you're going to go to 1,900 at the end of the spectrum, and that could be kind of like your bread and butter. Now let's figure out your macro split. An easy macro split, when you put into percentages that you see everywhere, that's kind of, again, a blanketed split, is 35% protein, 30% carbs, and 35% fat. Now, how do we figure that out? Now, 1 gram protein equals 4 calories. If we wanted to stick with that 35% of calories to be protein, we can go back to our example of that 140-pound woman ingesting 1,680 calories per day. So 35% of her calories is 588 calories of protein. Now we take that 588 calories of protein and go back to our full calorie intake there, and we can figure out how many grams of protein she needs. So again, don't feel obligated that you need to count every single macro, because you could go insane. But for some people, this is their, they like doing it. They like seeing the numbers. And if it's not your thing, you can just stick to those hand serving sizes sheet that I sent you before, and you'll be fine. So if you're at 30% of carbs, it would be 504 calories, and then whatever was left over for fat of 35%, it'd be 588 calories, just like protein. So that's your perfect scenario right there. And hopefully you guys figured out a little bit more information about macros. You can go back in this video and kind of watch my slides and figure out what you missed. But that's it for this week. Just a little bit more information, a little bit more education. Don't worry if you feel overwhelmed about macros. You don't have to do them, but this is kind of the next level if you were to wanting to see more of a push towards the right direction. So we'll see you guys next week, which is our final week, which is amazing. And we'll announce the winner next Friday. And yeah, stay tuned. Good luck. Now, if you're still listening, which I hope you are, um, there's always a hidden message, a little secret for some more points. So, if you would like 50 extra points, go back into this little slideshow, figure out what your calories are, and figure out your macro split of having your protein at 35%, your fat at 35%, and your carbs at 30%. Send it to me, and you'll be rewarded 50 points.